Well, after a 10-year hiatus, Zellers is making a comeback this spring with 25 locations across Canada. But one retail expert says the chain needs a lot more than nostalgia to appeal to today's consumer. The stores are set to be located inside select Hudson's Bay department stores. Hudson's Bay Company says 5 of the locations will be in Quebec, 9 sites have been allotted to Ontario, and 4 will be in BC. Another 5 locations will be in the prairies, and 2 will be in Nova Scotia. But amid inflation, high interest rates, and the rising cost of living, Bruce Winder, author of Retail Before, During, and After COVID-19, says the revived chain needs to offer both value and price points that connect with today's consumer. Well, joining us now to tell us more about this is Mr. Bruce Winder himself. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thanks for having me on the program.
So, as we mentioned, the chain seems to be focusing a lot of its marketing on nostalgia and appealing to those who remember Zellers, the restaurant, the red color theme, etc. But how much of that same Zellers store plan or setup will be seen in these new chains? What can we expect?
Well, my understanding, based on what the company announced, is that we'll see part of it, but not that much. There isn't really discussion of a restaurant, and you know what, the stores are going to be about 8 to 10,000 square feet, which is just a fraction of the original Zeller size. And we're really going to be looking at categories, just a few categories: baby, toys, pet categories, and home decor. So just a fraction of the categories that you would have seen in a Zeller store.
Definitely sounds like just a fraction. Now, are there any new elements of this revival of Zellers that may appeal to the modern consumer?
I'm not aware of any. We really have to see sort of what happens in terms of what products they're launching, what prices they're launching. I guess the one thing that would be new to consumers, Zeller's consumers, is an online presence. So, a lot's changed in 10 years, and the new Zellers under the Bay will have a website, and they have a pretty state of the art distribution center in the Toronto area that can handle a lot of products quickly using robotics. So that's going to be probably one of the big differences is Zellers is sort of caught up as it relates to e-commerce.
All right. Well, going back to your previous comments on price points and products that match the traditional value that consumers expect, can you tell us a little bit more about this and what exactly this would look like, especially for Zellers?
Well, I think it's going to be a real tough one because if you look at, the competitive set has changed a lot in 10 years. You've got Walmart, who just got incredibly strong. You've got Costco, you've got Dollarama, Dollar Tree, Amazon. These have all become serious retailers in the discount segment, the value segment. So Zellers, if they're going to come back in at that price point, sort of the value price point, it's going to be tough because they only have 25 stores. And the way retail works is the more quantity you buy, the lower price you get. So it'd be pretty hard to imagine them competing with those retailers I mentioned previously.
And on that point, we know Zellers was shuttered about 10 years ago and replaced with Target for a very short 2-year period. Can you tell us what led to these shutdowns previously and how this revived Zellers can avoid this?
Yeah, it's a good point because there's a reason why Zellers closed. Now, luckily, they were sold to Target, which was a great payday for them. But Zellers was sort of on a spiral downward, anyways. I used to work at Zellers for a couple of years, and the company was magical back in the '80s. But it just, as soon as Walmart came in '94, it just kept taking market share from Zellers, just because Walmart was run better. They had better prices, better assortment, bigger scale, better everything. So Zellers was sort of on a slow trajectory downward.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question pertaining to your research in particular. How does the evolution of consumerism during and following the pandemic play into the relatively traditional space of brick and mortar and department stores and supercenters like Walmart, Zellers, and Superstore, as you mentioned?
Well, you know what? We're changed. Consumers changed a lot during the pandemic, and now the consumer is sort of being hit by a freight train, which is really, inflation, high interest rates, job loss in the tech sector, probably more job loss, stock market's down. So it's going to be a real tough time, and this means consumers are looking for more value. They've cut back spending. They're going to continue to cut back spending. They're going to buy more private label products. More of their money's being chewed up, pardon the pun, at grocery stores. So they have to find ways to cut back in other areas that affect the retailers you mentioned.
All right, just about 30 seconds left here. But what are you particularly keeping your eyes on as Zellers prepares for its relaunch?
Well, the biggest thing I'll be looking at is the assortment. I'll be looking at the price point. I'll be looking at the assortment, the quality, the specification of the items, how big it is, what kind of signage is there, what kind of advertising, and of course, how they link it all into e-commerce. So I'll be curious to see what their go-to-market strategy is.
All right, Mr. Winder, thank you again for your time today.
Thanks for having me on.